Hello and welcome to the fourth trial run of Gamers District's podcast. I am your host Leon, and today we'll be talking about Nvidia's GeForce 700 series, Metro Last Light system requirements, and Square Enix on the Final Fantasy VS XIII news. So, as you can hear, it's pretty much me alone for today's cast because all the other cast members are either too busy or just too lazy to attend for today's cast. But no matter, since it's a trial run, I decided to give it a shot at doing a solo cast to see how it goes. Yeah, so let's start off with the first topic. There's not been much news this week, but one of particular interest would be that Nvidia is intending to launch their GeForce 700 series this year at Computex 2013. For those of you who don't know, Computex 2013 is a major IT expo where a lot of companies go there, and it's held in Taiwan. Usually sometime around mid-year every year. So this year will be held from June 4th to June 4th to 8th in Taipei. It's a great expo. I always look forward to it, seeing what especially what the Taiwanese companies have to offer. Specifically Cooler Master and Lianli. They make awesome cases, and in Computex 2013 I hope to see something pretty awesome too. Like I remember Lianli was like showing off some really sick cases which I wish I could own too. But back on the topic, the GeForce 700 series. So if Nvidia were to announce it in sometime this June, it'd be a pretty good thing, because the GeForce 600 series would have come out more than a year back then. The first GeForce card for the desktop would be the GTX 680, the flagship of the then 600 series, but it's now taken over by the Titan. That came out on March 22nd, 2012, and the earliest we would most probably see the 780 be launched in this year would most probably be sometime after Computex, which is around June 4th to June 8th, which is a good thing, because it's nice to see that Nvidia themselves have decided to follow the more than 1 year development cycle. It really helps them smooth out any wrinkles, gets the drivers straight, and so far, if it's were to go with the Computex 2013 launch, Nvidia would be ahead of AMD with their Radeon HD 8000 series, which is intended to be launched sometime in the second quarter of 2013, which is around half of the year. But there's really been no news, so some people are saying that it may be pushed to maybe the fourth quarter of 2013 or even 2014. I remember seeing that, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the Lenovo gaming desktops, if I'm not mistaken, which spotted a Radeon 8950, but that quickly came off the advertisements, because I guess Radeon doesn't want too much information about their 8000 series going on, and neither is there much information about the 700 series going on, except for the fact that it will be using a refreshed Kepler architecture. So it's not gonna be like the 500 to 600 jump from Fermi to Kepler, but that's not a bad thing, because as we've seen with Kepler, it's an outstanding architecture. It's really good architecture. I haven't had the chance to get my hands on it. I still use a Fermi GPU, specifically the 5 series, but the GeForce 7 series is quite interesting. Hopefully it gets to work on all the flaws which people mentioned with the previous launch of the Kepler. Not that saying that Kepler is anything bad. It's really good, and I really hope to see better driver support from Nvidia this year, because as a Nvidia user and an AMD user, I kind of think that and AMD may have had a slight advantage this year, especially with what all those games, the AMD optimized games, like those, specifically those released by Square Enix London, Hitman Absolution, Hitman what? I can't really remember. Sleeping Dogs, Tomb Raider, even DMC, which was recently released, is an AMD optimized game, but it still runs pretty well on Nvidia GPU, no problems there, except for maybe for Tomb Raider. That one had quite a bad performance with the Nvidia's GeForce series GPUs. So it's, like I said again, it's nice to see Nvidia taking their time with the development cycle and AMD doing the same. Definitely good to see them wrinkle it out. But there is one question those people who have been following the graphics scene would most probably be asking, is that isn't the current GeForce 700 series supposed to be what the GeForce 600 series currently is, because we know the rumors were around saying how fast that the GTX supposed GTX 660 Ti would be able to match the performance of the then Radeon HD 7950. So yes, it's a very good question, but what I think was that maybe in terms of raw performance, the GTX 660 Ti would have, the supposed GTX 660 Ti would have beat the 7950, but I suppose there's a valid reason why Nvidia didn't launch it, maybe because of those numbers were only synthetic benchmarks, or and really didn't bring on to real life performance, or there was a performance with there's a problem with the efficiency, I don't know, or it really just could be Nvidia intentionally holding back their better products, because you know they already own 2/3 of the market, so why not hold on to that market a bit more? You know, it's hard to say. It's really down to speculations of what you want to say. And so is it worth waiting for the second lineup for Kepler? I definitely think so. I definitely think that the second coming of Kepler isn't a bad thing. As we've seen the second coming of Fermi, I use the second coming of Fermi chip by the 6500 series, and well, it fixes most of the criticisms the 400 series definitely had in terms of efficiency and whatnot. So yeah, it'd be nice to have a see how the 700 series develops, especially being launched earlier than the 8000 series for now, if things are anything to go by. And it could work for Nvidia's way this time around if they launch it a little earlier, as we seen last year. AMD really capitalized on the 7000 series launching several months earlier than the Nvidia GTX 680 to start with. Although the 680 did come out and beat it in benchmarks, a few drivers later we're still quite close, and it's actually quite viable to get yourself a 7950 or 7950 gigahertz version edition. Those are really good cards, and I have to say Nvidia still can't catch up with AMD in terms of the lower range cards. So for those of you who are actually checking, yes, the GTX 700 series is actually out on mobile series, but it really isn't the same as what we have on the desktop lineup, because it's a bit different. So much of the mobile series still uses the GK 104, 106, 107, 208 lineup, so those are pretty much the current 600 lineups. And there are a couple of GTX 600M series which actually use Fermi architectures, so using the mobile series wouldn't really be a very good representation of how the desktop one would line up, especially with the only one really actually being introduced would most probably be the GT 720 and 710M. Those use the GK117 codename. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what a GTX 780 would be like. I'm most definitely interested in getting my hands on a GTX 770. 780 is a bit too pricey for me, but yeah, it's a nice number too, 770. Yeah, what's not to like about it? So that puts a wrap to the topic on Nvidia's Geforce 700 series launching at Computex 2013 this year. If you have any comments, please like it below and I'll see what I can do to reply about it. So the next news we have is, yeah, Metro Last Light, the X studio of THQ prior to it going bust, is pretty much gonna launch Metro Last Light really soon. Yeah, I think I did mention Metro 2033 earlier, and I might have made a mistake there, but yeah, it's Metro Last Light, which is the successor to Metro 2033. I've played a bit of Metro 2033, and I must say the graphics for that game is very outstanding, and the same looks to appear to happen for Metro Last Light. So before I get on to the optimum and recommended system requirements, which are pretty much the story of the day, I'll talk about the minimum system requirements which we're going to be looking at. So as usual, it supports Windows XP, Vista 7 or 8, which is nice to see support for XP actually, considering very few games of the AAA and come with DirectX 11 actually bother to go back to DirectX 9 anymore. So it's nice to see the boys at 4A doing a good job right there. So the CPU required for the minimum would be a 2.2 gig dual core, specifically, you know, something from the Intel Core 2 Duo lineup. It's pretty easy to see everybody having that. I don't think many gamers actually use a Core 2 Duo out there right now, but I might be wrong. Maybe a Core 2 Quad lying around, but I think most people have already moved on to the i series. If you're still using a Core 2 Duo series, maybe it's time to change. But you know, not everybody can afford a new CPU. RAM's around 2 GB, which is actually very nice to see. Very rarely do I see such a game with such a high fidelity graphics fidelity have only requiring 2 GB of RAM for the minimum, which is very nice to see. If I'm not mistaken, Bioshock Infinite one-ups it by only requiring 1 GB of RAM. And so the graphics card required would be a GTX 250 by Nvidia, or something on the HD Radeon 4000 series. It's hard to say what they're really looking for, but so as long as it supports shader model 3 or higher, it's pretty okay. So yeah, nothing much to see about the minimum system requirements there, except that it ain't really that heavy actually. So that's really good, because we'll be able to see players from the lower end of the hardware spectrum, or players who use notebooks support the game, and that's a really good step forward, especially in the people complaining about how unoptimized PC games have been recently, which I go and say, hey, PC gaming on the recent months have been so well optimized. I really hope things stay this way, and Metro Last Light seems to be pointing towards that. So now I'll move on to the recommended optimum system specifications, system requirements that Metro Last Light will need, and they're actually pretty crazy. So for the recommended system requirements, you have Vista 7 or 8, all which support DirectX 11, a 2.6 gig quad core, and that's not that exorbitant, but a quad core, and it's not the most common CPU out there. I know a lot of gamers use it, but I still don't see many quad cores around, especially with many people still preferring to use notebooks. But no problem there. It's good to know that Metro Last Light will actually support quad core thread optimization, something I really wish to see for in more games to come, especially console ports, which now but yeah, we've been seeing more games support multi-thread optimization, and this is definitely one of it. It requires 4 GB of RAM, and the recommended graphic card is a Nvidia GTX 580 or 660 Ti. If for of you don't know, the equivalent would be a AMD 7870. I'm not too sure with these numbers. I would most probably say the 788, 70, maybe even the 7850. They're both fine. They're more or less stand the same place as these Nvidia cards, and these cards are relatively high-end. The Nvidia GTX 580 was an X flagship, and the 660 Ti right now would be the slightly higher than mid range for the 600 series. So yes, that's something to note. And things get even crazier when we go to the optimum system requirements. They are, wait for it, a 3.4 gig multi-core, so we're looking at something higher than a quad core, maybe even a hexa core or an octa core, 8 GB of RAM, DirectX 11, that's understood, and a graphic card would be a GTX 690 or an Nvidia Titan. And there is no AMD equivalent to this card. The AMD just hasn't launched any card on the equivalent of the Nvidia Titan or the GTX 690. The GTX 690 being two GTX 680s put together, and the Nvidia Titan most probably like a middle finger to the PS4, which was recently launched. It's a very powerful single card, and there really isn't anything on AMD's 7000 series to really back it up. Most probably Club 3D's own 7990, which is 27950s snapped together. I don't know, I can't really remember that much about AMD's lineup, but even those 7990s have real driver issues. So yeah, optimum being a Geforce Titan. Seriously, I mean, that is so rare to see a game system requirements be really the highest end of the highest end that there is to offer in today's market. But that isn't really a bad thing, because I remember back then, where especially with Crysis, they didn't have a graphics card powerful enough to run the game with everything on at 60 frames per second and full HD. So it's a really nice thing. It's like the developers for Metro Last Light are developing the game for the future, when newer hardware comes out, and sooner or later the Nvidia Titan becomes most probably the 860 Ti, and players are still able to put it up, rack it up real high, and get some really good graphics even many years after the game has been launched. I remember the same thing with Metro 2033. The game looked fantastic on high, but when you put it up to the bare highest, it really tortured your computer. But the effects, the final outcome was really really good. So kudos to the developers at Metro Last Light for developing what I wouldn't even say the word a good port, because Metro is one of those games which are developed from up for PC, and that's what I really want to see. I've been using the word really a lot, so I've got to stop using the word so often. But I really want to see developers. Oh, there I go again. I would like to see more developers do the same thing, and it's quite disappointing when I heard that IDOS Montreal are not doing the same thing with Thief, considering Thief has its lineage in PC gaming. So yeah, it's quite disappointing, but it would be nice to see more companies do the same thing that Metro Last Light's company has been doing. They're developing systems which for the PC, primarily for the PC, and that I think is the way to go, especially with the PlayStation 4 confirmed to use architecture, x86 architecture, similar to what you see on PCs, and the 720 somewhere unknown, but from what we've heard, it's most likely going to be using going to use a PC architecture too. And the last piece of news we're going to wrap up for today would be Square Enix on Final Fantasy VS XIII news, and they're apologizing for the highly overdue news. This is taken during one of the talks on Square Enix Radio with the director of project, Tetsuya Nomura. And for those who don't know, Tetsuya Nomura is a pretty big guy in the Square Enix company. He worked as character designer on many of Final Fantasy's key games, specifically 7, 8, 10-2, and much of the Kingdom Hearts series. In fact, he was the game director for the Kingdom Hearts series. So yes, I have a major admiration for Tetsuya Nomura. He goes on to design one of the best video game characters out there. And there we are. It's the time where we have to announce the announcement of announcements. It's good to know that Final Fantasy VS XIII is still in development, and it's been what? It's been nearly 7 years already since Final Fantasy was first announced in November, in sometime in 2006, and it's quite disappointing really that we have to be told that, you know, we're gonna give you some news, but not just yet. It's sort of like baiting you, like, you know, hey guys, don't forget the game, it's still out there, we're still making it. I know there's a need to remind people about the game, but you best damn remind people about the game after 7 years and hardly anything about the game. You don't know whether it's gonna come out for the PS3 or the PS4. In fact, when it was announced alongside Final Fantasy XIII in 2006, Final Fantasy XIII is close to be the original 13 is close to be launching its third spin-off already. I mean, not exactly third spin-off, like third part already. And Final Fantasy VS XIII is just now announcing that it will announce some news. So yeah, Yeah, I'm not too sure what they're doing right there. Square Enix has recently announced that they had very poor sales, and Final Fantasy 13 is one of those things. Final Fantasy vs 13 is one of those things where fans have been asking for ages, and would it kill them to actually just give some more news about the game? Seriously, and you don't have to give an announcement about the announcement saying, oh, we'll be launching some news soon. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that, and I think it's kind of silly. In fact, you don't even have to mention it, and you could just launch the news. I want to talk about how the news is even held in the first place. It's not like as if anybody's gonna steal the secrets from Final Fantasy 13 or something like that. In fact, people are looking very much forward to Final Fantasy VS 13, and it's just such a pity that Final Fantasy VS 13 and Tetsuya Nomura, for that matter, have to resort to announcing an announcement. So yeah, that's it for the news for this week. So catch us every weekend and midweek. Yeah, there's been a slight change to the timetable right there. We no longer do a Saturday and Sunday cast. The cast now is done on a midweek and a Saturday on the weekends because of scheduling issues. And if you're wondering why the third one isn't out yet, if the fourth one's already up, it's because Sam's working on the music for the intro and the outro, as well as some animation effects in the middle. So yeah, catch us every midweek and weekend. Thanks for listening.